Magnesium is crucial for over 300 processes in your body, from energy production and muscle recovery to sleep quality and stress response. Yet, most Americans don't get enough. In fact, in a peer-reviewed clinical trial published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition, more than 75% of participants showed suboptimal magnesium levels before the study even began. Those who took Jigsaw Mag SRT, a time-release magnesium malate tablet, saw magnesium rise 30% over 90 days, and deficiency symptoms dropped by 63%. Remarkable results backed by real science. And for sleep and recovery, Jigsaw Mag Soothes delivers. In a 4-week clinical trial tracked with Oura Ring data, participants saw a 17% improvement in sleep quality, felt 34% less stressed, and rated their satisfaction 85 out of 100. 82% said they'd buy it again. 2 supplements, 2 clinical trials, 1 company that does the research. Jigsaw Health. Mag SRT for daily magnesium replenishment. Mag Soothe for calm, restorative sleep. To order, go to jigsawhealth.com. That's jigsawhealth.com. Use coupon code Hoffman15 for 15% off your order. That's jigsawhealth.com, code Hoffman15. Welcome back to today's Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ronald Hoffman. Our guest today is Dr. Austin Perlmutter. He's Chief Science Officer of Big Bold Health. And, that name sounds familiar. Well, a frequent guest and contributor here over the years has been Dr. David Perlmutter, author of Grain Brain and other great books. He's also collaborated with today's guest, his son, in fact, Dr. Austin Perlmutter, second generation integrative and functional medicine doctor, who co-authored the New York Times bestseller Brainwash, which is the latest book that's out from that duo, the doctors David and Austin Perlmutter. So we're talking about Big Bold Health, and one of the products that they're, the focus, as we mentioned in part 1, is on immune health. And that's a big area. It really encompasses a lot of different medical conditions, a lot of different challenges to our health. And we're talking about fish oil. So in part 1, we kind of talked about what differentiates Big Bold's Health, Omega-3 Rejuvenate, from the vast majority of products that are out there. They're fish oils that have a concentration of EPA, DHA. That's legit, because those are beneficial compounds according to the research. But in the refining process, which is a harsh chemical process, some of the ineffable ingredients that are present in fish that make fish healthy may be left on the cutting room floor. So of great interest to me has been new research about something called PRMs, pro-resolving mediators. So what are those? And can you get them in a supplement?
Sure. Well, let's just take one step back here.
Sure.
Because a central theme to all the work we're trying to do is to capture the value of what is found in nature in terms of a nutritional kind of orchestra that is beneficial for immune rejuvenation. And it's a very different approach from saying we're going to concentrate down and just say, take exactly this many milligrams of EPA or this many milligrams of quercetin. That's a popular way to go about this, which is to use the pharmaceutical model for nutrition. So our thinking is, how do we stick as close to what is found in nature and as close to the literature on certain dietary patterns that have been most strongly associated with better immune function and incidentally longevity, better overall health. So for example, the Mediterranean diet, a diet that is made up of many minimally processed, primarily plant-based foods, but also with some healthy fats and also more fish than things like red meat. So coming back to this question about what is left on the table if you were to do a highly refined fish oil, you had mentioned in our prior episode about how there's a difference between extra virgin olive oil and the, quote, olive oil that you'll often get in the store. And one of the most distinctive changes there is going to be whether or not you're getting the polyphenols. Polyphenols should make a good olive oil taste peppery. When you lose that, sure, it's still olive oil, but you may be losing a lot of the health benefits that come from those polyphenol antioxidants. And so when you go over and talk about maybe the equivalency around the omega-3s or the fish oils, well, it turns out that there are these molecules that have been pretty recently described. They're called resolving mediators, also specialized pro-resolving mediators or pro-resolving mediators. But thinking about kind of this continuum of starting to get a higher degree of resolution as to what are some of these health promoting molecules found within our foods, these are molecules that are found naturally in fish. And interestingly, you can create them in your body from omegas, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what we are showing in the work that we've done with these more minimally processed fish oils is that if you decrease the total amount of exposure to things like heat and other forms of processing, it may increase or basically may keep some of these molecules within the finished product. And it's not just these. You get more vitamin A, more vitamin D when you don't go through all these steps of processing. But I think where I would draw a parallel here is many people, myself included, were preoccupied with, fixated on a precursor to EPA, alpha linolenic acid, or ALA, which is found in, for example, flaxseed oil. And so many people thought to themselves, well, I've heard omega-3s are good. Flaxseed oil is a great source of omega-3s, which it is.
And for
So I should just
dyed-in-the-wool vegans, they don't have to kill animals to obtain it.
Correct. I actually grew up doing the spoonful of flaxseed oil. And so I think it was popular at the time because it was a great source of omega-3s. Still is. It's why people would say, oh, make sure you incorporate things like hemp seeds or chia seeds or flax seeds into your diet because they do have these fats. The problem is in conversion. And I think that's really one of the bigger learnings that we've had over the years because different omega-3s have different roles within the body. Same with omega-6s, I should say. But ALA, or again, alpha linolenic acid, which is the precursor to EPA, which is an omega that seems incredibly involved in the immune response, is subsequently converted to EPA at a pretty small percentage. And when you then go from EPA to DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, which is a key omega-3 for brain health, the level of conversion drops off dramatically again. So what we're talking about here is less than 10% conversion of that ALA from the flaxseed oil is going to be brought to the EPA and the DHA. And a lot of the research suggests it's really about those EPA and DHA levels that you have these stronger associations with health outcomes. And so looking at various markers of omega-3s, those are the things people tend to look at more. So,
and by the way, you can nowadays, not in a conventional doctor's office, but when you go to an integrative doctor's office, you can actually literally measure your red blood cell EPA and DHA, which
correct.
I think it's actually probably a better measure than measuring cholesterol, HDL, CRP, you name it, for prognosticating your likelihood of cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease. It's such an important marker.
I think it's really important too because one of the big issues with supplementation is you kind of get to this point of saying, well, how much should I be taking? How much is too much? Should I always be taking more? And for me, at least, the answer is no. I think there's a kind of slippery slope where you hear about something like vitamin D and think to yourself, hey, more is better. And so you just take massive doses and never test it. And like anything, if it's going to work, there's going to be a Goldilocks zone, and that's going to be different for every individual person. So for me, who lives up in the Pacific Northwest, I probably need more vitamin D than the person who is living down in, Haiti or somewhere closer to the equator. But the point I want to make around this is that when you look at the conversion level between the ALA to the EPA to the DHA, not only do we recognize that if you want to optimize towards, for example, DHA levels, you're not going to take a bunch of flaxseed oil and get there. It's the reason why, for example, if you have a pregnant person and you're really wanting to optimize their DHA levels, you would want to put them on a supplement that contains higher levels of DHA to get right to the point. But it turns out that that's not the whole story. Like I said earlier, we humans think we figure things out and there's nothing left to it. But these molecules can then convert into metabolites of omega-3s as well as omega-6s, which are called these resolving mediators. Again, pro-resolving mediators, specialized pro-resolving mediators. It's a bucket of metabolites. And it turns out that based on preclinical data at least, some of these pro-resolving mediators may be many, many times, 100, potentially even 1,000 times more potent at resolving aspects of an immune dysregulated state than the omegas themselves. And so they have names like myrisins, resolvins, protectins. There's a whole different whole set of lipidomics that concerns
Which really
itself.
describe their protectins,
Correct.
resolvins. But what do they resolve?
Yeah, so most of these are based on the inflammatory response. That's
Hmm.
kind of the idea. So it's in essence, if you think about what the role is of lipids, and I guess we could go down the whole kind of conversation around prostaglandin, cell membrane, how they're liberated in order to act on the immune system. But the point here would be you don't want to have a body that is perpetually in a state of elevation of inflammation, nor do you want to have a body that's perpetually at a state of zero inflammation. You want a body that is able to, like a thermostat, respond to changes in the body's stressors, demands. And so these resolving mediators seem to be a key piece of the puzzle that enables the body to return to a relative state of homeostasis. And why it's so interesting is, again, they're found to be present in fish oils that have been more minimally processed. We can create them in our bodies de novo out of the EPA, DHA, and also from omega 6s, I would add to the complexity of omega 6s are bad and
They're
omega
not all
3s are
bad. Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
They're not all bad. It turns out there's more to the story than that. But this gets us to this point of there are these programs that are running in the background of real foods and real food ingredients when we consume them that turn out to be far more important than what most people believed. So the omega-3 story, yes, it's around these pro-resolving mediators. Also, if you consume a more minimally processed omega, you're probably going to be consuming more vitamin A, more vitamin D. And like I said before, when we've analyzed our minimally processed fish oil, it turns out there are a host of other lipids in there beyond just the omega-3 family. So these are things that have their own independent research associated with various health outcomes and various immunometabolic parameters. So really what we're trying to get to is back to this incredible value of minimally processed nature. It's the same thing that we're doing with our research around Himalayan tartary buckwheat, which is to say, what can we understand about what is in this food, and how can we help nature to optimize the nutrients there rather than processing them out to get to high levels of quercetin or to ensure that you're getting exactly this many milligrams of antioxidants per dose. That's the pharmaceutical model. Ours is trying to embrace the magic of the orchestral effect of what is in nature. And it turns out that we're starting to learn more and more that might help us to coordinate towards more of a regulated immune response. This is actually what we're showing in our clinical research right now around Himalayan tartary buckwheat in terms of some of these correlations with immune metrics, with epigenetic metrics, with metabolic metrics that relate to this kind of composition of nutrients found in a real plant.
So, what is the status of the average American vis-a-vis omega-3 fatty acids? And, there's innumerable things we can measure. There's so many things that are delivered by fish. But what's the use case for the average person taking this? Not necessarily even targeting a disease state. Not saying, oh, persons with heart disease should take, pharmaceutical fish oil, which is now actually a thing. You've actually demonstrated that there's some cardioprotective effects of taking prescription EPA. So cardiologists are recommending it. But, for the average person or your area of specialization, which is brain health.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I want to be cautious here not to, generalize things that should be more specific to an individual's needs. What most of the consensus documents would align on is about 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week at around 500 milligrams of EPA plus DHA per day. That's the equivalency when you kind of space it out over the course of that week. I believe the most recent Harvard JAMA article I read on this said around 2 total grams of omega-3s per week. And so that's, again, about 2 servings. What we're talking about, though,
So that's
here
the sweet
is
spot. You don't necessarily have to megadose.
well, what we're talking about here is kind of long-term optimal health. This is where some of the information has been. Now,
Prevention.
that's different. That's different from saying a person who is coming into the clinic who you have concerned about some specific condition where you're treating them with a therapeutic
Okay.
dose. And that's where for mental health conditions, for cognition, for other things, that's where you see a lot of the data around the 2 to 3 gram mark for
Rheumatoid
combined.
arthritis, say, where you really
Right.
want to tamp down very active, profound inflammation.
Right. And importantly here, the data would suggest that around the world, very few people are actually getting adequate amounts of omega-3s from their diet. I mean, I'm one of these purists where I would say it would be great if everyone could go out and get almost all the nutrition they need from their diet. Since I do live in the Pacific Northwest, this time of year, I am eating as much salmon as I can because it's relatively cheap. It's wild. It's coming in from Alaska. You can get sockeye salmon in the store. It's incredibly delicious. And I also understand that if you live in other places,
Yeah.
and also if you don't like eating fish, that's going to be a much bigger challenge. So, coming back to kind of the general recommendations, and again, this is light. There are a lot of people you probably had on your show that would say, that's insane. You need to get 2 to 3 grams a day. You're nowhere near that. But the data will show from kind of a maintenance level that it's around that 500 milligram marks of DHA and EPA per day. And you can go through again in various condition specific levels. I think the latest thing I saw was around 110 milligrams is the typical omega-3 intake. That's larger populations from what people are just getting from diet
It's
alone.
trivial.
It's not a lot. It's not a lot. And it comes back to some of these conversations around not just getting more of the things you need, but looking at all the stuff that you don't need that's kind of making up the bulk of the food that you consume. Because if you're eating a highly processed diet, unless you're consuming some sort of special bar that has had added omega-3s, you're just probably not getting much of it. Most foods now index towards more omega-6s, and it doesn't necessarily mean that omega-6s are bad, but it just means that you're crowding out any sort of opportunity to get the omega-3s because you're getting these other types of oils and the fats that you're consuming.
Indeed. So there's a couple of concepts that are gaining currency now. Immunosenescence, which is this gradual process of deterioration of the immune system, just as we might have, orthopedic problems as we get older, as we have sarcopenia. There's all these degenerative processes, but immunosenescence is really at the heart of many of these problems. And there's also this concept of inflammaging. It's like a key pathway towards aging is that we become, as we get older, progressively more inflamed.
These are two of the most dominant and important themes that people need to understand if they're interested in the longevity space at all. It's much sexier, more appealing to say, hey, in order to fight aging, I should just take a peptide and be on my way. It's also popular to say, well, let's go ahead and cover up the effects of aging by getting an injectable for cosmetic reasons, or let's just kind of get some sort of a superficial face cream, whatever, because I feel like I'm getting older. But if you ask the question of what is driving that process, it turns out that across the board, an aged immune system seems to be one of the best predictors of all of the other things that we associate with aging. To understand why this makes sense, people need to appreciate that their age and birthdays is not the most important number they need to know in terms of how they're aging. And why I say that is because two people who are the exact same age, they could even be twins, could have incredibly different health outcomes, not just in terms of age-related conditions, but in terms of how long they live. So simply knowing a person's age, it's important. It gives you a first degree of understanding of what they might be at risk for, right? An 84-year-old probably is going to have less joint cartilage than a 23-year-old. So there is some information you gain. But when you look at how that person is aging at the level of their cells, at the level of their organs, we can now see that that is far more predictive of any sort of age-related outcome. So if you want to know what a person's chances are for developing brain issues, you're far better served knowing their brain age than you are simply knowing their age and birthdays. If you want to know how much risk a person is at for having heart issues, you're better served understanding their heart age than you are their age and birthdays. And these types of aging calculations are called biological aging or biological age, in contrast to what most people know of, which is chronological age, which is just tethered to how many times have your cells been around the sun. So instead of simply asking how many times you've been around the sun, the question for biological age is how have those times around the sun affected your cells, affected your organ systems? So once you understand that, then you could ask questions about what is driving biological age. And it turns out that the function of the immune system is one of the core variables. And this is why, if you're one of those people who's obsessed with the longevity space and you're looking at the hallmarks of aging, many of those directly relate to the immune system. So to get back to now what you're describing, there are these two terms. One is immunosenescence. This is the aging of the immune system. It's closely related to senescence in general, which is kind of the aging of cells that is associated with certain programs within those cells that may be helpful in some ways and destructive in other ways. But aging of the immune system in particular is important, not just because your immune system is less able to fend off threats, but because your immune system then influences the systems throughout your body to speed up their rate of aging. So immunosenescence and the related term, which is the age-associated inflammation or inflammaging, seem to be key drivers in worsening of cognition as we get older. Seem to be key drivers even of loss of things like skin elasticity and wrinkles. All of these things are interrelated. So this is very much kind of an inside-out approach to understanding aging, whereas most people are focused on the outside in. What can I see? What is problematic for me today? Is the issue that I'm having problems with my shoulder because I played a lot of racquetball when I was younger? Well, let's just fix the shoulder. Or is the issue that my skin is looking more wrinkly because I had more sun damage? Well, let's just do something about the skin. But immunosenescence inflammaging asks a different question, which is, if the immune system is a core driver of these age-related issues, what can we do to rejuvenate the immune system and help to reprogram it? Because the difference here is that unlike neurons, unlike skin cells at some point, that you're always making immune cells and you're making them in bulk. We're talking about billions of cells a day, millions of cells in a minute. And so then there's this question of, what can we do to alter the flow of production, right? Get upstream in that production line so that the new immune cells we're making are going to be more healthful, more rejuvenating, can send their positive signals throughout the body. And so it's a little bit of a technical kind of process to get to this point. But then the idea is that we're now learning how various forms of exercise and various forms of nutrition and how sleep optimization, all these other lifestyle variables can directly interface with the programming of the immune system. And it's so far beyond where most people are focused, which is, hey, I just don't want to get sick when I'm getting on this plane. And it's now getting to the core drivers of what allows us to not just be healthy in the future, but optimized in the moment. So I think it's a far more fascinating conversation than a lot of what people are fixated on right now, topicals, peptides, and the like, because it isn't just a find a molecule and go after it, try to fix that one part of the puzzle. It's instead trying to alter the system that is driving so much of our opportunity for health.
Okay, folks, at this point, let's pause and allow one of our sponsors an opportunity to share an important message with you. So here goes. Listen up, please. Magnesium is crucial for over 300 processes in your body, from energy production and muscle recovery to sleep quality and stress response. Yet most Americans don't get enough. In fact, in a peer-reviewed clinical trial published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition, more than 75% of participants showed suboptimal magnesium levels before the study even began. Those who took Jigsaw Mag SRT, a time-release magnesium malate tablet, saw magnesium rise 30% over 90 days, and deficiency symptoms dropped by 63%. Remarkable results backed by real science. And for sleep and recovery, Jigsaw Mag Soothes delivers. In a 4-week clinical trial tracked with Oura Ring data, participants saw a 17% improvement in sleep quality, felt 34% less stressed, and rated their satisfaction 85 out of 100. 82% said they'd buy it again. 2 supplements, 2 clinical trials, 1 company that does the research. Jigsaw Health. Mag SRT for daily magnesium replenishment. Mag Soothe for calm, restorative sleep. To order, go to jigsawhealth.com. That's jigsawhealth.com. Use coupon code Hoffman15 for 15% off your order. That's jigsawhealth.com, code Hoffman15. You know that feeling. You're exhausted, but your brain just won't quit. You're staring at the ceiling, watching the clock, dreading the morning. Here's something that actually helps. It's called Kyolic Specialty Series Sleep Mushrooms Plus. And it's unlike anything you've tried before. This isn't some chemical sleep aid that leaves you foggy and dragging the next day. This is a clean botanical formula built around certified organic reishi mushrooms grown on real farms, not in a lab, combined with valerian root to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer, L-theanine to quiet that racing mind, and Kyolic aged garlic extract, one of the most trusted wellness ingredients available for circulation and stress support. It's vegan, non-GMO, no gluten, no dairy, no artificial anything. Just 2 capsules, 2 hours before bed, and you wake up actually rested, not groggy, not out of it, just refreshed. Kyolic Sleep Mushrooms Plus from Wakanaga. Learn more about this and the entire Kyolic Mushrooms Plus line at kyolic.com. That's KYOLIC.com. Look for Kyolic at natural health stores nationwide and online. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting our sponsors. They are what make Intelligent Medicine continuing free resource to you. And now back to today's guest, Dr. Austin Perlmutter. I want to focus also on, a really innovative series of products that have been developed by Big Bold Health that are based on HTB, Himalayan tartary buckwheat. Now, I'm familiar with buckwheat because it's a traditional Eastern European dish. My grandparents used to eat a lot of kasha made from buckwheat, and buckwheat is a healthy grain. It's actually a gluten-free grain. Actually, I think technically it's a berry, from what I understand. And it's grown it's well suited to kind of Northern European and Northern Asian climes, Canada, because it's kind of a cold weather grain. It's a resilient grain. But then there's this thing called HTB, Himalayan tartary buckwheat, that Dr. Jeffrey Bland, the founder of Big Bold Health, kind of zeroed in on as kind of a super nutrient.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing that up. It's a great representation of the efforts that we're putting forth with Big Bold Health, which is to, borrow from what nature has already done and leverage that to help people to improve their health. So Himalayan tartary buckwheat or tartary buckwheat is very different from the common buckwheat that I guess you grew up with. And just to reiterate the point that you already made, buckwheat is not a grain. It's actually a fruit seed. So it's biologically very different from something like wheat, and it's just kind of incidental that it happens to have wheat in the name. It throws a lot of people off.
Right.
But then within the family of buckwheat, there are a number of different subtypes. Common buckwheat is the most common one, by definition, I guess, but that's what you're going to find in the grocery store. Tartary buckwheat looks very different, tastes very different, and most important to our conversation is biochemically a completely different animal. Because it is optimized towards the production of molecules called polyphenols. Polyphenols being these plant molecules that a plant actually uses as part of its own defense system, part of its own resilience system. And just for people to have context for this, so there are about 8,000 plus polyphenols that have been discovered and people know about, but they're part of this larger conversation around the so-called dark matter of nutrition, which per a New England Journal article that came out about 2 years ago, constitutes almost 140,000 different chemicals found in food. And what's interesting about polyphenols in particular is if you look at some of the foods with the best data around their health effects, so considering green tea with EGCG, considering coffee with the antioxidants, even red wine with resveratrol, or if you were to just ask about what is the Mediterranean diet and why does it seem to be one of the healthier diets, one of the core constituents of each of these foods and dietary patterns is that they are rich in these polyphenols. But most people have had their diets relatively stripped of polyphenols through high processing of the foods that they consume. Tartary buckwheat compared to common buckwheat can have up to several hundred times higher levels of certain polyphenols. It's especially high in polyphenols like rutin and quercetin. And so what we've been studying is a number of things. One is how do you grow it to optimize polyphenol content? It turns out the way you grow it is by creating a healthy microbiome for the plant, by creating the right fungi, the right bacteria in the soil. Two is that you can sprout tartary buckwheat, and when you sprout it, it increases the polyphenols by about 2 to 3-fold, while simultaneously decreasing some of the anti-nutrients, which is very interesting. And then we're studying what happens when people consume this food in a in large scale data. So we have an ongoing study, 850 people consuming the sprouted tartary buckwheat, looking at cognition, looking at epigenetics, looking at brain function across a number of other metrics. We've also
The
already
aging
published.
clock, so-called aging methylation
Correct.
clock, yeah, that kind of stuff.
And we already published a study specific to what you just said, which is age clocks, looking at kind of a concentrate of the polyphenols in tartary buckwheat, showing an up to 47% slowing in the rate of aging using one of these biological aging clocks in people taking this product.
Wow.
So kind of the sum total of it is, we're starting with our hands in the soil. We have our farmers. We're trying to grow this crop as thoughtfully as we can. We have regenerative organic certification, so that we're creating the best environment for this plant to grow, all the way up through large scale kind of clinical data demonstrating how a food, really just a food, may be capable of influencing these pathways and leading to some of these health effects on especially brain function, because there's actually a growing body of research coming out of top tier institutions showing that when you augment a person's diet with higher sources of polyphenols, that it's associated with a variety of brain-focused outcomes. Specifically in the study I'm referring to here, which was an 18-month intervention with a polyphenol-rich diet, they showed a slowing of the rate of atrophy of the brain's memory center of the hippocampus.
Wow, that's exciting. When I first got turned on to HTB, Himalayan tartary buckwheat, it came as a flour, and I made HTB pancakes, which were yummy. They kind of a toasty flavor, but they're short of making pancakes and waffles. I think Big Bold Health offers the flour, right? You still offer the flour,
We
right?
still have the flour, but most people, I would
Right.
say, are
Other
getting
delivery
excited specifically
systems,
about
yeah,
the sprout powder.
right. The powder, okay, which is you could get it in capsules, right?
Yeah, so you can get the sprout powder. We actually include it in a bunch of different products
Okay,
now. So we have a microbiome product. We have a polyphenol concentrate. But the powder you can get just in its pure form, which is literally just organic sprouted tartary buckwheat powder. Our goal is to make it accessible to more people. So it's in chews form, it's in capsules-based form. The capsules are kind of augmented with or boosted with other nutrients like pre and probiotics.
the chews are really yummy, and in fact, kids like them. So you're going to grab a sample of those?
I was actually just have to close my window because it looks like there's about to be some loud noises outside. But
Oh,
yes,
okay.
the chews are very popular. I'd say that was a breakout popular product just because it's a super easy way for people to get the sprout
Right.
powder. Our network at Big Bold Health ranges from people who are bona fide chefs who are willing to create incredible dishes with whatever they have to people who just want the convenience of taking the products on the go. So it's nice to have kind of a diversity of opportunities.
Yeah, the sprout powder actually is something that you can add to a shake, and it's pretty innocuous in terms of flavor. And that way you can put it, add it to your protein powder, creatine, et cetera, et cetera. And in fact, I think you do make a shake, right?
We
That's
do have a shake.
yeah.
Yes, and it
Okay.
includes the sprout powder along with it's a combination of plant-based and whey protein, but it
Hmm.
also includes additional polyphenols and vitamins and minerals.
And that's just a good one-stop shop if you're looking for a shake. And it has kind of a pleasant nutty flavor. So you've managed to hit the flavor sweet spot, so-called, without sugar.
Well,
And that's a good thing.
well, let me just make a quick note on that
Yeah.
because this was really fascinating. When we started with the flour, which many people really love, what we found is that some people felt it was a little bit too bitter. And the
Hmm.
reason it's bitter is very straightforward. It's because it's super high in polyphenols.
Polyphenols. Yeah.
Polyphenols
Yeah.
are what
That's the
make dark
signature.
chocolate.
That's the
That's it.
signature of polyphenols. It's
You,
what
you
gives
want bitter
coffee its
food.
bitterness. It's what gives hops its bitterness in beer.
Correct.
It's the signature of the high delivery of polyphenols.
That's exactly it. So you want your coffee to be a little bitter, not burnt, but bitter. You want
Hmm.
your olive oil to be peppery. You want
Hmm.
your dark chocolate to be a little bitter because of the polyphenols. But what we found, which was really fascinating, is that when we sprouted the tartary buckwheat, it actually decreased the bitterness, turned it
Hmm.
into a more nutty flavor. And we believe the reason for that is because it actually increased a certain molecule, another plant compound that has an anti-bittering effect. So it
Hmm.
doesn't mean you decrease the polyphenols. It just means the plant seemingly made higher levels of this anti-bitter molecule, which is super convenient. It turns out that it's just kind of a natural process.
And the third component, you mentioned that your interests were in fish oil, and also in the Himalayan tartary buckwheat, but also in support for the microbiome. And inherently, I think polyphenols, I used to think that polyphenols work by getting absorbed and crossing the blood-brain barrier. And if you ate a lot of berries, your brain would turn purple and that would be good. And that's how it worked. But it turns out there's a lot of signaling from polyphenols in the gut, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it turns out that about 90% of polyphenols in our diet pass to the large intestine without being absorbed, digested. And there are two ways to look at it. You say, well, obviously they don't do anything since we can't absorb them. Or you say, maybe there's something more going on. And it turns out that, and this is a whole other conversation, in this discussion that is perpetually happening around prebiotics, so things like fiber that feed a healthy gut microbiome, it seems to be the case that polyphenols actually exist within this family, because polyphenols, while we can't necessarily absorb them, can serve as food for our gut microbiome. That these molecules, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily kind of nourishing the gut microbiome in the same way that fiber does, but the microbes can convert them, can metabolize them, and create different byproducts. So these are
Postbiotics, in effect.
correct. So these are a form of postbiotic that by itself may now be more absorbable by our body. So it may be that the gut microbiome is the pass-through that enables us to make these molecules something that we can absorb. But the other really interesting thing is that these polyphenols seem to have differential effects on the gut microbiome. Kind of by definition, that's what a prebiotic is supposed to do. But it seems like certain polyphenols can actually bias or influence the populations of the gut microbiome. So it's not just about, well, you consumed this many milligrams of quercetin and it gets into your bloodstream and it acts on your immune cells, but rather when you consume the cohort of or orchestral effect of nutrients found in a real food, that it has these multiple or kind of pluripotent effects on our biology. And one of the big conduits by which it can actually influence our bodies and our immune system in particular is this throughput through the gut microbiome. So even though it's kind of complicated, you have to be thinking about maybe it's the case, just maybe, that food that co-evolved with us over thousands and thousands of years and our gut microbiome over thousands and thousands, if not millions of years, that there is kind of a built-in system that is designed to transfer data. That's kind of our opinion, is that there's a reason why these signals come from the microbiome of the soil to the plant to the gut microbiome of the human and then influence human health. It's not just incidental that we happen to discover it. It's probably part and parcel of this entire process that's been going on since
millions and millions of years of exquisite evolution, where we developed a synergy with these natural products of nature. So this is fascinating. So if I were a young pre-med student, I would love to sign up for an internship as a research assistant in your lab out there on the Pacific Coast, in the Pacific Northwest. But that ship has sailed for me. So congratulations on the wonderful research that you guys are doing out there at Big Bold Health. And I just want to mention to our listening audience, if you want to get the lowdown on that and access the products, just go to bigboldhealth.com/Hoffman. And as a special introductory offer, we're offering Intelligent Medicine listeners 20% off site-wide using the code bigboldhealth.com/Hoffman. Use the code Hoffman for 20% off site-wide. So, Austin Perlmutter, I want to invite you back in a few months because you got a lot of projects cooking, and I think you'll have some new research to share with our listening audience. Is that true? Because maybe some of that information is embargoed and projects are underway.
Yeah, so it's still a little bit under wraps, but we've just kind of gotten the preliminary data for this massive RCT, randomized control trial, placebo-controlled, looking at the sprout powder for brain function. So some really exciting stuff there. And so if we're able to talk in a couple of months, I'll be able to share some of that information. But we also have a publication, a manuscript that is being reviewed right now for publication, which looks specifically at the makeup of the different polyphenols in different forms of tartary buckwheat versus common buckwheat. And why that's really interesting is when we sync it with the data we're getting out of this large-scale clinical study, I think it'll be some of the best information on any kind of food as medicine subset of the medical conversation that exists. So if that's of interest to you and your listeners, I'd be super excited to come back and talk about it.
Well, great. We'll wait for it to work its way through the editorial process and the research pipeline. And we'll get you back on to talk about it. So thank you so much for joining us. It's Austin Perlmutter, MD. He's the Chief Science Officer of Big Bold Health. Find out about them at bigboldhealth.com. And great work. Keep up the progress. And regards to your dad.
Thanks so much.
Okay. I'm Dr. Ronald Hoffman, and this is the Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I want to thank you for listening to the Intelligent Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app, and get new episodes automatically downloaded every weekday. And please give us a rating and review. It truly helps new people discover intelligent medicine. The Intelligent Medicine Podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Finally, please visit drhoffman.com and discover everything intelligent medicine has to offer, including frequently updated, unbiased health news and fully vetted product and supplement recommendations. There were many important reasons why I started my FullScript online supplement dispensary. I wanted to offer you the same curated professional-grade supplement brands that I use, the ones I know and trust. I also wanted to ensure that they weren't counterfeit or expired. Recently, I've been hearing more and more about counterfeit or expired products purchased from online retailers. With FullScript, you can be confident your supplements are genuine and they'll arrive with optimal freshness and potency. Also, buying through FullScript offers fast, free shipping, optional refill reminders, and a highly rated mobile app. It's safe, secure, HIPAA compliant, and offers world-class support. Go to drhoffmanstore.com for more information and to start your free FullScript account. You'll get access to the supplements and features you need to help you achieve your wellness goals, including my custom targeted protocols that combine the products I recommend to address specific needs: heart health, immune support, and much more. To get started, just go to drhoffmanstore.com, drhoffmanstore.com.